Hello, my name is Graham, and today we're going to talk about a very valuable ink modifier called Curable Reducer. So Curable Reducer is particularly great to use in white ink since it is much thicker than standard colors. And so we'll start making up a batch right now. So you can see how the ink is behaving right out of the container. Pretty thick and not flowing. We're going to fill our empty quart container about a half full. I particularly like using Reducer in the winter months when the Plastisol is a lot colder and you really got to mix it to get it to the consistency that makes it a whole lot easier to print. So you can use a gram scale and you can add anywhere from 1% to up to 20% to your ink to reduce the viscosity. Today we're just gonna do it by eyeballing it. I like to have a handy dandy shop towel ready. Now you don't want to add too much because you can always add more. Start stirring this in. Want to make sure you're getting it thoroughly stirred. Before printing, you always want to stir your ink, and with adding the reducer, it makes it so much easier to stir. And we're going to start seeing it work its magic. So now you can see it's starting to flow, and that is what we want. Really got to mix it to get it to the consistency that makes it a whole lot easier to print. So that's what we're looking for. Could even add a little bit more. So a couple things to keep in mind with Reducer is that depending on how much you add, it will reduce the opacity of your ink. So a good rule of thumb is to label your containers that you've added Reducer to so you don't end up reducing your ink even more the next time you go to print. So if you want to mix it with a scale, which is great if you're starting out, so you can kind of see how much Reducer affects the ink in certain quantities or amounts. So you can just get a cheap kitchen scale, measures in grams. Just get your empty container on the scale and zero it out. And then you would add your ink, whatever amount you're planning to mix. So you could start with 100 grams and then pick how much you want to reduce the ink by. So 10, 20%, you would do the math on that and add it in there. Here we have the reduced ink and the ink fresh out of the container. And we'll kind of show side by side here how it kind of shears differently and is not quite flowing. It's going to be challenging to work with on press. And then here is the reduced ink. It's going to look a lot better and print a lot easier on press. So all it takes is just a little bit of prep work and you're going to have a lot easier time when you go to print.
Hi everybody, I'm Matt with NorCal Screen Print Supply. Today we're going to go through some of the tips and tricks of printing soft-hand and curable reducer modifiers in your ink. Let's go into it. Okay, so when you have a fairly large print and you have thick ink, using curable reducer is going to thin the ink out. It's going to allow you to get a nice, easy flood, nice and consistent. And when you go to clear the print, it's going to be nice and easy to work with. Clear that large print, just a print stroke and a clear stroke. Nice solid coverage, no missing areas. And it's going to be able to do that much easier than just ink right out of the container. Bonus tip is that when it is cold in the winter, you get into the shop, everything's really icy, 50, 60 degrees. You put some reducer in there, it's gonna help the ink flow much more freely. Another tip and trick about curable reducer and soft hand, it is gonna help with reducing or eliminating fibrillation. And on large open areas like that, your ink is gonna have a much better, softer hand feel. Also be sure when you are putting additives into your ink, not to exceed 20% total additive unless you really want to add some sort of translucency to the ink. Generally, if I was mixing the two, looking about 10% curable reducer, 10% soft hand clear base.